Choosing the correct size of bike is a simple process, but there are some really key points to remember.
We will be the first to admit, though, that we are not experts on this subject by any stretch of the imagination, so we have turned to Isla Bikes, who are run by a group of genuine experts, to give us some guidance.
This is my bike.
This is my bike.
Can you say that's my bike?
The first point is not to choose a bike based on age. There are tall kids and small kids, so while it might provide some basic guidance, age alone is not enough to ensure that your child is going to be safe and comfortable on their new bike.
How do you choose then? Well, firstly, you measure their height. If you can get them to stay still for long enough, stand them next to a wall, rest a book on the top of their head and mark the point on the wall where it meets it. Measure to the floor, and that is their height.
Then measure their inseam. Now this is the most important part. Place the book between your child's legs and nestle it snugly. Again, measure the point on the wall where the book meets it. That is the length of their inseam. Armed with these two measurements, you should now be able to get a much better idea of size. Most dedicated children's bike manufacturers will list height and inseam measurements as a guide on their websites.
So, when you head into your local bike shop or the bike that you've ordered online arrives at your house, how do you know that it is the right size? Well, the first thing to look at is that when they are sat in the saddle like this, with one foot on the floor and one foot on the pedal at the bottom of its stroke, their knee is slightly bent just like this. Exactly the same, in fact, as you would get on an adult bike. Also, when they're sat on the saddle with both feet on the floor, make sure that the balls of both feet can reach the floor for stability. However, make sure that the saddle's not too low, because if you do that, pedalling is extra hard for them, and it can also make balancing a bit harder too, as their knees can knock them from side to side.
Balance bikes are slightly different, so the saddle should be set so that your child can get their foot flat on the floor and still have a slight bend in the knee. Oh, put it back there.
Now, whilst choosing the correct frame and wheel size is probably the most important part for fit, Isla Bikes have also pointed out that for a bike to be truly comfortable and fun to ride, you should also pay attention to some of the other parts of the bike. They are specifically fitted for smaller people. So pay particular attention to the brakes, that their hands are able to easily reach them. And you can also look at the diameter of the handlebars. If that's slightly smaller, it's going to make them more confident on the bike. Oh, and also with the brakes, make sure they can easily pull the levers on.
Look also at the cranks and the pedals, because they need to be in proportion with the rest of the bike. Shorter cranks particularly mean that the saddle can be set in the right height, but yet when the pedal comes up, the knee and the hip aren't going to have to bend too far, so they can be more comfortable. And then it also means that the whole bike itself can be a little bit lower and still have plenty of clearance when going around corners. Now here's something that I wouldn't have thought about, but apparently younger kids need to sit more upright on their bikes than older kids, and that's because their internal organs are proportionally much larger. Don't worry, Albie, there is plenty of time to get aero later on, mate. Between the ages of about 5 and 10 probably, that's right. It's just less comfortable for them to be hunched over. And then of course, it's also easier to learn to ride a bike when you are sat more upright. You don't need to be aero, Albie, at the minute. Right, ready? Okay, good lad. Pop your bum there. There we go, good lad. Right.
A common mistake when getting a bike for your child is to choose one size too big so that they've got some time to grow into it. And to be fair, this is something I've been guilty of myself in the past. However, you should try to steer clear of this temptation, because a bigger bike is far harder for them to handle, and it's going to be much less enjoyable to ride. It could also potentially dent their confidence. Oh, and let's face it, it's also far less safe as well.
Yeah, bigger wheels, meanwhile, could actually make the bike easier to handle, more stable, and then also better able to handle bumps. So if you have a choice between, say, a 16-inch wheel bike and a 20-inch wheel bike, and your child is equally comfortable on either, then go for the larger wheels. Albie, come back a bit. Boop, 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 boop.
So choosing the right size of bike for your child is ultimately just about making sure that they are comfortable. Remember not to choose a size based on their age, that younger children need to be more upright, and also that every part of the bike needs to be in proportion.
That's right. Now, if you want to see some more, well done Albie, chip off the old block. If you want to see any more videos about bike fit, but for adults this time, if you click just up there, then there's one about how to set your saddle height, and many of the principles remain the same, or just down there for a video about crank length, which we have said is also important for children's bikes. Oh, and then last of all, do make sure, if you haven't already, to subscribe to GCN.
Great.
That's
Yeah.
right, subscribe!